Zhao Yuan could never forget that early morning. The narrow alley was silent and deserted, with dim light peeking tentatively from its farthest end. The fine June rain fell soundlessly, yet stabbed sharply at him and the woman beside him. He had no idea why she was there, lifelessly sprawled across the pavement, dead before his very eyes. The world seemed to turn upside down. Nothing made sense anymore. All he could feel was sheer bewilderment.
Bang!
The heavy thud of a glass hitting the table echoed as Zhao Yuan, his face flushed red, stubbed out his cigarette. The noisy barbecue joint buzzed with life, making the stillness at Zhao Yuan's table all the more striking. He had stormed out of his house earlier after a fierce argument with his wife, only to find himself aimlessly wandering until he ended up here. The ashtray on the table was overflowing with cigarette butts. Empty beer bottles lay scattered, and a plate of reheated skewers had gone cold once again. He'd been sitting there for hours. Everyone else seemed so much happier than he was, and the thought made his misery all the heavier. As the alcohol seeped into his veins, a thought emerged in his mind, one he had never dared to entertain before. He wanted to kill his wife. The moment the idea surfaced, his hands began to tremble uncontrollably. He pulled out another cigarette and placed it between his lips, but no matter how many times he flicked the lighter, it wouldn't catch. Frustrated, he tossed the lighter onto the table. Just then, an unfamiliar hand reached over, and with a sharp click, a flame appeared before him. Startled, Zhao Yuan looked up and saw a man grinning at him. Zhao Yuan leaned in to light his cigarette, nodding in thanks. "Appreciate it, man." To his surprise, the man sat down across from him. "You're Zhao Yuan, aren't you?" Zhao Yuan frowned, hesitating. He suspected this man might be one of his wife's spies. The man didn't seem to mind his silence and continued, "I'm Song Tao. Don't you remember me?" Song Tao. Zhao Yuan looked at him doubtfully. "Your old elementary school classmate. We even sat in front of each other once. Have you really forgotten?" As he spoke, the man pulled out his phone, scrolling for a moment before enlarging a photo and pointing to it. "Look, this is you, and this is me." Zhao Yuan's mind, dulled by years of hardship, took a while to process. He searched his memory and finally grasped a faint recollection. Oh, Song Tao. Recognition gradually dawned as he stared at the photo. Zhao Yuan forced a smile. "Now I remember. You've changed a lot. Almost didn't recognize you." 20 years will do that, Song Tao said warmly. "But why are you sitting here all alone, looking so down? Trouble at home?" The sudden encounter with an old classmate stirred a sense of grievance within Zhao Yuan. Fueled by alcohol, he poured out his frustrations. Song Tao listened and sighed. "Life, huh? Everyone's got their share of crap to deal with." He then shared his own woes, his wife's infidelity, flaunted openly alongside her lover, and the disdain of his in-laws. Hearing this, Zhao Yuan felt a twisted sense of camaraderie. His old classmate's struggles mirrored his own. Zhao Yuan had met his wife through an arranged introduction. Perhaps they hadn't known each other well enough before marriage because their problems only became apparent after tying the knot. At first, the issues were trivial, the sort of everyday annoyances one could endure. But a year ago, his wife had an affair. Zhao Yuan had wanted to divorce her immediately, but his cowardly nature and relentless pressure from her brother had kept him from going through with it. Instead of remorse, his wife grew increasingly disdainful of him, constantly picking fights and making his life miserable. To make matters worse, Zhao Yuan had recently lost his job. He didn't dare tell his wife, so he pretended to go to work each day, passing time in libraries or fast food joints. But 2 months later, not only was he still unemployed, someone spotted him and informed his wife. That day, their fiercest argument yet erupted, with his wife hurling unprecedented insults at him. In a fit of rage, Zhao Yuan smashed a bowl and stormed out. He sighed heavily and called for the waiter to clear the cold skewers before ordering more food and another case of beer. "Song Tao," Zhao Yuan said, filling their glasses. "It's fate that we ran into each other tonight. I almost didn't recognize you, my bad. Tonight's on me. Let's drink to our heart's content. Song Tao didn't refuse, clinking his glass against Zhao Yuan's with a heavy thud. From that night on, Zhao Yuan and Song Tao became friends and often hung out together. Occasionally, Zhao Yuan would see Song Tao's flamboyant wife, who would greet him with a detached nod. What puzzled Zhao Yuan was that her demeanor gave no hint of the torment Song Tao claimed to endure. Song Tao, however, lamented bitterly, explaining that her public displays of harmony only made her private disdain more unbearable. Meanwhile, Zhao Yuan's conflicts with his wife escalated. Each argument left him more despondent, and he gave up even trying to find a job, aimlessly wandering through his days. One day, after another fierce fight, Zhao Yuan once again demanded a divorce. To his surprise, his wife immediately stormed into the bedroom and smashed his computer and gaming console. Then, sobbing, she called her brother. When her brother arrived, he yanked Zhao Yuan out of bed and jabbed a finger in his face. "You'd better be joking. Otherwise, I swear I'll beat you to death right here." Left with no choice, Zhao Yuan backed down. After her brother left, his wife sneered. "Dream on. You're nothing. Even if there's a divorce, it'll be on my terms." Overwhelmed with frustration, Zhao Yuan reached out to Song Tao. Song Tao looked equally grim. The two miserable men poured out their woes to each other, nearly moved to tears. After a few drinks, Song Tao, slurring, said, "Sometimes I feel like jumping off a building. But then I think, why should I die? Why not them? Don't you agree?" "Exactly." Zhao Yuan, now tipsy, agreed fervently. "What did we do wrong? Why should we suffer while they get to be happy?" "That's right. Cheers." Feeling validated for the first time in ages, Zhao Yuan, still reeling from his earlier humiliation, began to speak without restraint. "We should just kill them." "Yeah, kill them." The two drunken men hit upon a chilling plan. But as they delved into the details, Zhao Yuan hesitated. "I've never killed anyone. She's still my wife. If I kill her, her brother will definitely come for me." Song Tao snorted. "That's easy. I'll do it for you." "Huh." Zhao Yuan's alcohol-addled mind struggled to process. "What do you mean?" Song Tao slung an arm around his shoulder. "If you're too scared to do it, we'll switch. I'll kill your wife and you kill mine. Even if the police investigate, they'll never connect the dots." "Oh." Zhao Yuan, enlightened by the plan, mulled it over and marveled at its brilliance. Emboldened by drink, he felt invincible. Zhao Yuan didn't remember how he got home. When he opened his eyes, his head felt like it was splitting open. Struggling to sit up, he noticed his body was covered in bruises and wounds. Gritting his teeth against the pain, he climbed out of bed, only to find the house in even worse disarray than when he had left. Pots, pans, and dishes lay shattered all over the floor. His wife was nowhere to be found. Piecing together fragmented memories, Zhao Yuan managed to reconstruct a rough sequence of events. Last night, when he returned home drunk, his wife had, predictably, erupted in anger. Fueled by liquid courage, Zhao Yuan fought back, yelling in return. In a fit of rage, his wife smashed the dishes and left him covered in scratches and bruises. Sigh, Zhao Yuan rubbed his face hard, feeling a profound sense of futility about his life. Then, something flashed in his mind, something he had fervently discussed with Song Tao the previous night. His heartbeat quickened. What he had dismissed as drunken talk now seemed startlingly clear in hindsight. Even after a cold shower, the thought wouldn't fade. Zhao Yuan knew this wasn't just a passing impulse. He dialed Song Tao's number. "Song Tao, about what we talked about last night. Does it still stand?" Song Tao's groggy voice came through, still thick with sleep. "That deal. We help each other out."
"Oh, that."
"Of course, it stands." "What? Are you having second thoughts?" Zhao Yuan laughed. He and Song Tao agreed to meet that evening to plan everything in detail. That night, the two didn't drink much. They meticulously hashed out every aspect of their plan, working until late into the night before settling on a preliminary outline. Since Song Tao's grievances were greater, they decided Zhao Yuan would take the first step. "She's been working the evening shift lately," Song Tao explained calmly. "Her hours are from 4 p.m. to midnight, and she usually gets home around 12:30. Song Tao's tone remained eerily composed as he spoke. "I don't know how long she'll stay on this shift. Maybe it'll change tomorrow, or maybe she'll work it until retirement," he said with a bitter smile. "But we need to act quickly. Delays could complicate things for both of us." Song Tao described a narrow alley his wife had to pass through on her way home. The alley streetlight had been broken by some kids a month ago and still hadn't been repaired, leaving it pitch black at night. The only source of light and activity was a small mahjong parlor halfway down the alley. But every Monday, the parlor closed for the night, plunging the alley into utter darkness. Song Tao's wife had complained about this numerous times, unaware that her words had planted a seed in his mind. Their final plan was this. The next Monday night at midnight, Zhao Yuan would wait in the alley. When Song Tao's wife appeared on her bike, Zhao Yuan would kill her and take her belongings to make it look like a robbery. Afterward, he would leave immediately without lingering. As they finalized the details, doubts began to creep into Zhao Yuan's mind. Was he really going to do this? Killing someone was no small matter. Once he took a life, he'd be forever burdened by the guilt. Was it worth it? What if he got caught? The death penalty was a very real possibility. "Brother," Song Tao said, looking at Zhao Yuan with gratitude as he poured them both a drink. "I don't know how to thank you. Don't worry. When it's your turn, I'll take care of everything for you." "My turn?" After focusing so much on Song Tao's wife, it took Zhao Yuan a moment to remember. His own wife was also part of the plan. The unease in his heart vanished in an instant, replaced by a twisted sense of satisfaction. "All right," Zhao Yuan said, downing his drink in one gulp. Zhao Yuan stood before a mirror, dressed in a black raincoat, and found the sight oddly amusing. The raincoat was an old hand-me-down from his father, its surface dull and its creases white and brittle from age. But Zhao Yuan had no intention of buying a new one. In situations like this, even the smallest oversight could be costly. The weather forecast predicted rain that night, a convenient excuse for the raincoat. He was at his father's old house. Since the drunken fight with his wife, they had been giving each other the silent treatment, and he hadn't returned home. It wasn't time to leave yet. He took off the raincoat and folded it neatly. Then, he picked up the nylon cord Song Tao had given him and practiced in front of the mirror. First this move, then that, he mimed the act of strangling an imagined victim. Song Tao had prepared 2 cords, one for each of them. To be extra cautious, Zhao Yuan also brought a knife. If the cord snapped, the knife would serve as a backup. He had never killed anyone before. He didn't know how to make it quick or silent, what to do if she screamed, or what his contingency plan should be if someone else appeared in the alley. Only now did he begin to feel truly nervous. Time seemed to move faster than usual. Before long, it was time to leave. Zhao Yuan took a deep breath, grabbed his tools, and set out. Rain drizzled steadily, tapping softly against his raincoat. Just as Song Tao had described, the alley was pitch black, save for faint light spilling in from its 2 ends. Zhao Yuan pressed himself against the wall. Midnight came and went. According to Song Tao, his wife should appear around 12:20. Minutes ticked by. Zhao Yuan grew increasingly anxious, the cord in his hands digging into his palms. He began to worry the sound of raindrops on his coat might be too loud, pacing nervously back and forth. But she didn't show. Another 10 minutes passed. Still no sign of her. By 1 a.m., Zhao Yuan's nerves were stretched to their breaking point. He wondered if he had been exposed. He called Song Tao in a low voice. "Song Tao, has she come home yet?"
Huh? No, not yet.
"Why, you're not done." Song Tao's voice was oddly hushed, its source unclear. "She never showed up. Did something tip her off?" "Impossible. Just wait a little longer." If she's still not there by 1:30, head home. Zhao Yuan hung up and resumed waiting. The rain intensified, its patter against his hood growing more irritating by the second. Then, in the darkness, a single light appeared. Zhao Yuan froze. The light grew brighter. It was an electric bike, its beams slicing through the rain as it approached. His heart pounded like a drum inside his hood. Taking a deep breath, he moved toward the bike. Looking back, Zhao Yuan would always feel this moment was some kind of omen. The hood of his raincoat and the woman's helmet narrowed both their fields of vision, making them blind to all but what lay directly ahead. Two blind souls. As the bike passed, Zhao Yuan swung the nylon cord in one swift motion, looping it around her neck.
Crash.
The bike toppled over, skidding forward on the wet ground, while the woman crumpled at Zhao Yuan's feet. Zhao Yuan wasn't sure how long he held the cord tight. The woman's frantic struggles gradually ceased until she lay completely still. Exhausted, Zhao Yuan let go, and her lifeless body slumped to the ground like a rag doll. Her helmet fell askew, and her rain-soaked hair clung to her face like seaweed. Leaning on his knees, Zhao Yuan panted heavily, feeling more drained than ever before. He wanted to run, but his legs refused to obey, forcing him to sit on the ground instead. He remembered Song Tao's warning, always confirm the victim was dead, leaving loose ends could spell disaster. But getting close to a corpse to check for signs of life? That seemed even harder than the act of killing itself. Trembling, he reached under her raincoat, searching for her hand. When he found it, he felt for a pulse. That's when he noticed the bracelet. Even through his gloves, Zhao Yuan recognized the distinctive texture immediately. He yanked the raincoat open in a panic. There it was, unmistakable, a bracelet with fine chain links and tiny golden beads. He scrambled to the woman's head, all fear gone now, and brushed the wet hair away from her face. By the dim light of the fallen bike, he saw her features clearly.
Boom.
Something exploded in his mind. His head tilted as he began to vomit uncontrollably. Lying there, lifeless, was his wife. Beep. Zhao Yuan was trembling all over. Just moments ago, he had run back from the narrow alley in one breath, still wearing his raincoat, which was dripping water continuously. Song Tao. The call connected. He stammered through the entire ordeal, then crouched down with his head in his hands. How could this happen? I'm done for. I'm done for. On the other end, Song Tao sounded anxious and kept apologizing. I'm sorry, man. The plan changed at the last minute. I didn't have time to let you know, so...
Oh, right.
We need to figure something out fast. The police might come for you any minute. I'm done for. What do I do? Her brother might be waiting outside to kill me. Don't panic. Don't panic. Come to my place immediately, but make sure no one sees you. After hanging up, Zhao Yuan stood in place for a long time before nervously cracking the door open for a look outside. His brother-in-law wasn't waiting by the door, and Zhao Yuan let out a small sigh of relief. His wife's belongings were still on the table. After the crime, his remaining rationality had forced him to follow the plan, taking his wife's phone and other small items, including her ID and bank cards. Thinking of this, Zhao Yuan's taut nerves loosened slightly. His wife's identity wouldn't be confirmed too quickly. He still had some time. But then, he realized something. Something he'd overlooked, a matter so severe it could destroy him. That was Song Tao. According to their agreement, Zhao Yuan was supposed to kill Song Tao's wife, which would implicate Song Tao to some extent. But now, it was entirely different. Zhao Yuan had killed his own wife, leaving Song Tao uninvolved. However, Song Tao knew the evil Zhao Yuan had committed, knew his motive, the weapon, and the method. If Song Tao wished, he could send Zhao Yuan to prison at any time. This realization completely unnerved Zhao Yuan, and he paced around the room like an ant on a hot pan. In truth, he didn't believe Song Tao would betray him. The two had been primary school classmates. Before running into each other recently, they hadn't spoken in 20 years and bore no grudge. If Song Tao reported him, Zhao Yuan would counter-accuse him of instigating the crime. But even if the chance of betrayal was only 0.1%, it was tormenting Zhao Yuan to no end. And most importantly, what did Song Tao mean on the phone by the plan changed? Why had his wife appeared in that narrow alley at that time? Thinking it over, smoking one cigarette after another, Zhao Yuan finally gritted his teeth and dashed out the door. The rain had stopped. The street was deserted, with streetlights casting pale white light on the ground. All along the way, Zhao Yuan felt as though someone was watching him. He quickened his pace, almost running down the street. He'd never been to Song Tao's place. Following the address given over the phone, he navigated his way there. The entire residential complex was quiet, as though still asleep. Zhao Yuan stopped under Song Tao's building, counting the floors and looking up. The dark windows showed no signs of life. He entered the stairwell, climbing cautiously, trying not to make a sound. On the second floor, he was startled by a gray, hulking mass sprawled on the stairs, nearly crying out. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a drunkard lying there, reeking of alcohol. Zhao Yuan exhaled in relief, stepping over the drunkard and continuing upward. It seemed Song Tao had been expecting him. The door was ajar. Zhao Yuan glanced around before carefully pushing it open. Song Tao, he called softly, stepping inside, but there was no response. In the next moment, he froze. A chair lay overturned on the floor, next to which a woman was sprawled, motionless, back to the door. Judging by her attire, it was Song Tao's flamboyantly dressed wife, sister-in-law. Zhao Yuan approached, calling out gently a few times, but the woman didn't respond. A foreboding feeling crept over him. Circling to the front, he took one look and collapsed to the ground. Her face was ashen, her eyes bulging, and half her tongue protruded from her mouth. For a moment, Zhao Yuan thought he was reliving the scene of his wife's death in the rain. The nausea returned, and he stumbled to the sink, vomiting yellow bile. She's dead too? Zhao Yuan couldn't control his thoughts, his mind looping endlessly over the question. Dazed, he returned to the body, staring blankly at the ligature marks on her neck, then at his own hands, where similar marks had imprinted. Did I kill her? But I only just got here. No, if I killed my wife, then Song Tao must have killed his. Song Tao. Song Tao.
Where is Song Tao?
Zhao Yuan fumbled for his phone and called Song Tao. No one answered. He called again, still no answer. Dialing a third time, he nervously glanced around while waiting. Sorry, the number you have dialed. Zhao Yuan couldn't hear the rest of the automated message. His hand fell limp as he stood before a wall. A blown-up wedding photo hung on the wall, showing a man and woman leaning close, smiling blissfully at him. The woman he recognized. She was lying lifelessly, not far away. But who was the man? Zhao Yuan blinked hard, unable to reconcile the smiling face in the photo with the Song Tao he remembered. He felt a suffocating pressure in his chest, his stomach twisting as alarm bells rang in his mind. He bolted out the door, disregarding whether anyone would hear him, and half ran, half tumbled down the stairs. But he forgot about the drunkard sprawled on the second floor. His foot caught, sending him tumbling down the stairs, landing on the platform between two floors. The drunkard, dislodged by the fall, tumbled down after him like a sack of meat.
Ah.
Seeing the second corpse today, Zhao Yuan was now a seasoned observer. He immediately recognized this was no living person. It was absurd. Zhao Yuan was so stunned he almost laughed. But this face, it looked familiar. Loose items spilled from the drunkard's pockets as his body rolled. Zhao Yuan froze, picking up the ID card that had landed by his foot. One glance, and it felt like a heavy blow to the head, leaving him in a daze. That face. He looked again at the corpse on the ground. Though slightly different, the resemblance was undeniable. The smiling groom in the wedding photo was him. But what shocked Zhao Yuan the most wasn't the face, but the name beside it. Why, how then he struggled to breathe, as though everything had shifted out of place, leaving him standing there, dumbfounded. The ID card slipped from his hand. The flickering stairwell light illuminated the name, Song Tao. Lu Yong was sleeping soundly when a shrill phone ring woke him up. Hearing that a murder had occurred in his residential complex, Lu Yong was startled but quickly got dressed and rushed over. Downstairs, across a few buildings, then upstairs. Xiao Zhou was already there, interrogating two people on the first and second floor platform. One of the men kept trying to stand up, but judging by the odd angle of his ankle, it seemed he was badly injured.
What's going on?
A fight? Lu Yong asked as he approached Xiao Zhou. Xiao Zhou shook his head. Not sure. Ask them anything, and it's like talking to two drunks. The crime scene was further upstairs, and Lu Yong didn't intend to stay here long. But he soon noticed something strange. The injured man's expression wasn't normal at all. You all, he started to ask but stopped mid-sentence as he realized what was off. The person lying on the ground was clearly dead. Lu Yong was momentarily confused. Where was the crime scene exactly? Wasn't it reported that the victims were a man and a woman? He stepped back, flashed his badge, and barked. What's going on here? What's your name? Xiao Zhou jumped in surprise, and the injured man paled, his face going blank as he stared at Lu Yong, mouth opening and closing silently.
Speak.
What happened? I didn't kill him, the man stammered.
Who are you?
What's your relationship with him? At this point, Xiao Zhou had subdued the man. According to him, his name was Zhao Yuan. He had arrived at the scene not long before and found the man on the ground and the woman upstairs already dead. Zhao claimed he had tripped over the deceased man, which led to his fall and subsequent injury. When asked why he had come here, Zhao started mumbling. One moment, he said he was looking for someone, and the next, he claimed he didn't know who. His suspicious behavior led to him being taken back to the station. Lu Yong entered the room where the female victim had been. Her body had already been removed. Several colleagues were busy examining different rooms. Lu Yong stopped in front of a wall, staring at an enlarged wedding photo displayed there. No wonder the male victim had looked familiar. He recognized this couple, though he wasn't well acquainted with them. He only knew the man's name was Song Tao. Now that Song Tao and his wife were both dead, initial assessments pointed to homicide. Could Zhao Yuan be the killer? Why was his behavior so strange? It had rained the previous night, leaving the ground wet. Zhao's footprints weren't just in the stairwell. They extended all the way into this room. Then there was the matter of the emergency call. Zhao claimed he hadn't made it. So who had? At that moment, Xiao Zhou came over. Brother Lu, we looked into the emergency call. It's really strange. How so? The phone number belonged to someone who died 2 months ago.
Dead.
Lu Yong was shocked but quickly understood. Sometimes, for various reasons, a large number of abandoned but uncancelled phone numbers are sold illegally. It's often hard to trace the actual user. Clearly, this was one such case. The caller had reported the crime, but didn't want to be traced. What could they be hiding? While Lu Yong was deep in thought, a call came in. A woman's body had been found in a narrow alley not far from here. Lu Yong hung up and refocused on the wedding photo. In one morning, 3 bodies had been discovered in this area. The body was discovered by the owner of a mahjong parlor. Ugh, bad luck. If I'd known, I wouldn't have come back. How am I supposed to run my business now? Lu Yong ignored the owner's complaints. Do you know her? The owner shook his head repeatedly. No, never seen her before. He then proudly added that his mahjong parlor had been running for 20 years. Both he and many regulars were deeply attached to the place, which is why he hadn't moved, even though the surrounding old buildings had been torn down. Every Monday, the parlor was closed so he could visit his elderly mother in a neighboring city. This was a routine all his regulars knew. He explained that on those days, the alley became eerily quiet, especially at night, with not even a ghost around. But this time, He got a call from a regular saying the parlor's door had been pried open. He rushed back, only to find the door intact, but a corpse nearby. At this point, he started sighing heavily. "A call?" Lu Yong frowned. "Who called you?" "No idea. My business cards are everywhere in the city. Anyone could have had my number." Lu Yong took the owner's phone. Sure enough, the call came from the same number as the earlier emergency call. Now, things were becoming more complicated. At the very least, the caller knew about the body in the alley. But wait, if they were sure there was a body, why not report it directly to the police? Perhaps they weren't entirely sure, which is why they tricked the mahjong parlor owner into checking. Conversely, they had been certain about the two bodies in the residential complex, which is why they called the police. It seemed the caller had a very close connection to all three victims. Lu Yong stepped aside. A fallen electric scooter lay by the roadside, its key still in the ignition and its light on, likely belonging to the victim. Judging by the scene, the scooter was some distance away from where the body lay. It seemed the victim had been attacked while riding. The person was subdued, while the scooter, propelled by inertia, rolled forward before falling. Unfortunately, the victim appeared to have been searched, with no identification left on them. Another detail caught Lu Yang's attention. The strangulation marks on this victim's neck closely resembled those on the female victim from the earlier scene. Lu Yang suddenly had a wild idea. He pulled out his phone, found a photo of the wedding picture from the earlier scene, and showed it to the parlor owner. "Do you recognize anyone in this?" The owner was about to reflexively shake his head, but then squinted at the bride in the photo. "Huh? Isn't that her? You know her?"
No.
"Then why did you?" Lu Yang cut himself off, frustrated. The owner scratched his head. "Haha, sorry, I don't actually know her, but I've seen her before. A few times late at night, riding her scooter down this alley. She's very pretty, so I remembered her. Officer, what happened to her?" Lu Yang frowned. "Late at night? Around what time?" Past midnight. Maybe just after 12. She might have been coming home from work. I mean, who else would be out at that hour regularly?" Ignoring the innuendo in the man's words, Lu Yang pressed on. "Did this happen occasionally or every day?" "Well, I'm not sure when it started, but every time I looked outside at that hour, I'd see her. Does that count as every day?" Lu Yang nodded. "Do you have security cameras installed in your shop?" The owner hesitated, and Lu Yang understood. As he was leaving, he advised, "If you don't want this kind of trouble again, invest in some cameras." Back at the station, Lu Yang went straight to see Zhao Yuan. Zhao Yuan looked troubled, but calmer than before. He didn't try to flee this time, and just sat there, visibly exhausted. Lu Yang sat across from him, speaking casually. "Since you're so tired, why didn't you stay home and sleep last night?" Zhao Yuan was startled, muttering something incoherent. "Just tell me, why were you there today?" "You said you were looking for someone. Who?" "Not talking? From what we've learned, you and Song Tao were elementary school classmates." This time, Zhao Yuan reacted. He suddenly looked up, his wide eyes seeming to plead for help. "So, you were looking for Song Tao?" "Yes, no. I mean, no. TSH, make up your mind. Were you, or weren't you?" Zhao Yuan hesitated again. Lu Yang could sense something was off. "Is it about someone else? Are you afraid to talk because of certain people or something?" Zhao Yuan returned to his silent state. Lu Yang sighed, then Xiao Zhou stuck his head in, calling Lu Yang out of the room. When Lu Yang returned, he slammed the table. "Tell me the truth. Did you kill them?" Zhao Yuan, already frazzled, was caught off guard. Then he noticed that Lu Yang had placed something on the table in front of him. He stared at it for a long moment, his expression crumbling, and finally collapsed back into the chair, utterly defeated. When he saw that ID card, Zhao Yuan felt his mind turning to mush. Ever since that night when he accidentally killed his wife, everything in his life had spiraled into chaos. He still remembered clearly the first time he saw that elementary school graduation photo at the barbecue restaurant. That man had pointed to the enlarged face of a child in the photo and claimed, "That's me, Song Tao." But Zhao Yuan couldn't recall if the child was really Song Tao or not. Maybe it was. Now, however, he was certain. The man he had met was definitely not the grown-up Song Tao. The real Song Tao, reeking of alcohol, had died on the stairwell. So who was this fake Song Tao? Could he also have been one of their classmates? Otherwise, how would he have their elementary school photo or know both Zhao Yuan's and Song Tao's names? Sitting in the police car, Zhao Yuan began to piece things together. From the attitude of Song Tao's wife, could it be that this fake Song Tao was the affair partner she had mentioned? If that were true, then this matter should have been confined to a married couple and a third party. Why did it end up involving him? And another thing, his accidental killing of his wife, was that truly an accident, or had someone set him up? From the moment he left the apartment complex to the time the officer sat down across from him, Zhao Yuan's mind replayed these questions over and over. Should he tell the police about all of this? If he spoke up, it would inevitably reveal that he had killed his wife. Speaking of which, had his wife's body been discovered yet? Zhao Yuan was so lost in his thoughts that he didn't notice the officer, Lu Yang, observing him closely. Lu Yang had stepped out briefly and now returned with something unexpected, an item that brought Zhao Yuan's heart sinking to the pit of his stomach. It was the knife. The knife he had initially prepared as a backup for the crime but had completely forgotten about afterward. There was no denying the knife was his. It bore the marks of years of use. This knife was found not far from the residential complex you visited, in a nearby alley. Alongside it, we discovered a deceased individual and an electric scooter, Lu Yang said. Zhao Yuan felt as though he had fallen into a deep well, its slippery, moss-covered walls making escape impossible, and the tiny opening above felt light years away. Leaning forward, hands braced on the table, Lu Yang fixed his eyes on Zhao Yuan. "Look, your knife and your presence tie you to two separate crime scenes. Both female victims bear identical strangulation marks. Don't you think that's a bit too much of a coincidence? But I don't think this is as straightforward as it seems. Tell us everything you know." "It is too much of a coincidence," Zhao Yuan muttered, looking up at the aluminum tile ceiling with a heavy sigh. Suddenly, a realization hit him, something he had completely overlooked before. When he had frantically called the fake Song Tao in his moment of panic, the man had told him to come to his house. Under normal circumstances, wouldn't a real friend have come to him instead of asking someone on the verge of a breakdown to travel? This whole thing had to have been orchestrated by the fake Song Tao, leading him into the crime scene and framing him for everything. "Officer," Zhao Yuan said, "if I told you I was being played, would you believe me?" As he spoke, Zhao Yuan seemed to age 10 years in an instant, his eyes rimmed with red. Lu Yang was taken aback. The man who seemed like the most obvious suspect somehow appeared to be the person who understood the case the least. Then, Zhao Yuan told his story from the day of his wedding to the moment he found himself sitting there, every word, every detail. Finally, with his head hanging low, he admitted, "I confess, I killed my wife, but I swear I didn't kill the other two." Lu Yang believed him. After all, if Zhao Yuan had already admitted to one murder, what reason did he have to hide the others? "Then tell me, who did?" "I don't know. I don't know his name. I don't know where he lives." And then Zhao Yuan added, "Officer, I'll accept the death penalty. I just need to know who he is and why he's doing this." Lu Yang remained silent for a long time. Clearly, this fake Song Tao wasn't just out to kill one person, as the initial plan had suggested. At the very least, he intended to drag Zhao Yuan and his wife down with him. Wang Tian tossed his coat aside and dropped heavily onto the couch. He was in a foul mood because nothing had gone according to plan. No, it wasn't just a small deviation, it was a complete disaster. He inserted his own SIM card into his phone, having already disposed of the old one that belonged to someone now officially declared dead. On his way back, he had thrown it into the river. Opening his photo gallery, he scrolled to a particular image, the elementary school graduation photo. He stared at it for a moment before clicking delete. He had met Guo Li over a year ago, thinking it would just be a fling. But Guo Li had taken it seriously, even talking about divorcing her husband to marry him. Terrified, Wang Tian had deleted all her contact information overnight. Unable to reach him, Guo Li had started showing up at his door, which only made him more annoyed. Guo Li believed Wang Tian was distancing himself to protect her, and she was deeply moved. She had no idea that by then, Wang Tian had already met Xiao Yun. Wang Tian had a thing for married women. Like Guo Li, Xiao Yun was also married. But she was different, prettier, more alluring. In other words, Xiao Yun had more than one boyfriend. Wang Tian was just one of her backups, someone she'd call only when no one else was available. Yet, the less she cared about him, the more obsessed Wang Tian became. At the same time, he tried to reconcile with Guo Li. When Xiao Yun ignored him, he would go back to Guo Li. But Guo Li had become increasingly infatuated, to the point where one day she even said she wanted to kill her useless husband. Wang Tian was shocked. He realized this woman was trouble, the kind of trouble that could destroy him. But he didn't let it show. One day, as Guo Li passionately ranted, she brought out a thick photo album and flipped through it, pointing to a picture of her husband. "Remember this face? That's him." Wang Tian frowned. "You want me to kill him? Are you trying to get me killed? Don't you want to be with me?" Guo Li shouted, pulling out a picture of herself. "Look at me. I was beautiful back then. I deserve better than this. And now, this man wants to dump me. You have to help me, do you hear me? And if I don't," Wang Tian asked, "then I'll kill you first." Guo Li's tone was dead serious. As Wang Tian casually flipped through the photo album, he began to formulate a plan. That's when he saw the elementary school graduation photo. "Whose is this?" he asked. "It's his," Guo Li said with a sneer, pointing to a skinny, scruffy boy in the picture. "Look at him. So pathetic." Wang Tian stared at the photo for a long moment before responding. "Does your husband still keep in touch with any of these people?" "Ha. A loser like him? He doesn't have a single friend. Who'd want to keep in touch with him?" Closing the photo album, Wang Tian looked at Guo Li. "Fine. I'll help you. But you have to help me too." Guo Li's face lit up with a triumphant smile. "Together, we can handle a loser like him 10 times over." Wang Tian lowered his head and stared at the photo again. It wasn't until much later that he learned the truth. The two women he was involved with, Guo Li and Xiao Yun, had husbands who were elementary school classmates. Song Tao, he murmured to himself, his eyes lingering on a chubby face. That face was almost identical to the one in the wedding photo hanging in Xiao Yun's house. His gaze shifted to the boy Guo Li had pointed out, the dark, skinny one with nothing remarkable about him, blissfully unaware of the storm heading his way. "Zhao Yuan," Wang Tian whispered. Using the graduation photo, Wang Tian successfully approached Zhao Yuan. Initially, he intended to impersonate someone at random, but when he stood in front of Zhao Yuan, the name Song Tao inexplicably slipped out. In hindsight, he guessed it might have been due to his own jealousy towards Song Tao. Unbeknownst to anyone, everything that followed had already been set into motion at that moment. As a fellow man, Wang Tian understood Zhao Yuan's life must have been far from easy. With a wife like Guo Li and an overbearing brother-in-law, few could endure such a life. By fabricating his own tale of hardship, Wang Tian successfully stirred up Zhao Yuan's resentment. Once the plan was finalized, Wang Tian informed Guo Li. He had no real intention of killing Zhao Yuan. They bore no grudge against each other, and he had even been involved with Zhao Yuan's wife. His real target was Guo Li. Keeping her around was like living with a ticking time bomb. The purpose of proposing this swap murders plan was to achieve this. If he directly urged Zhao Yuan to kill his wife, it would never happen. But by framing it as an exchange, it gave the illusion of shared involvement, easing the psychological barrier. In any case, Wang Tian absolutely couldn't do it himself. After discussing the plan with Zhao Yuan, Wang Tian then turned to Guoli and told her to head to an address he provided on Monday night to help him clean up a body. He repeatedly emphasized to Guoli that to avoid being seen, she must take the narrow alley.
That Monday, it rained.
Guoli hesitated for a moment and even considered backing out. But she thought, what if I don't go? What would Wang Tian do with the body all by himself? So, she mounted her electric bike and rode toward her doom. Meanwhile, Xiao Yun, who was supposed to appear in the alley, had already been picked up by Wang Tian from work. The two went for a late-night snack and returned to Xiao Yun's place at around 1 a.m. Unexpectedly, her husband Song Tao, who was supposed to be on a business trip, had returned home early. As they laughed and entered the house, Song Tao ambushed them, screaming, "Adulterers!" Both were startled as Song Tao, reeking of alcohol, charged at them with bloodshot eyes. Wang Tian quickly shielded Xiao Yun, enduring Song Tao's barrage of punches and kicks. What happened next? Wang Tian's memory briefly blinked out. He only remembered Song Tao raising a chair to smash over his head. For some reason, their scuffle spilled into the stairwell.
Bang! Bang!
The sound of Wang Tian slamming Song Tao's head into the wall repeatedly.
Crack!
The sound of Song Tao's skull fracturing.
Ah!
Xiao Yun's piercing scream. What happened afterward? Afterward, Wang Tian covered Xiao Yun's mouth and dragged her back into the apartment. Clearly terrified, Xiao Yun let out another blood-curdling scream as soon as he released his hand. Wang Tian quickly muffled her again, saying, "Shoo, shoo, stop screaming." Tears streamed down Xiao Yun's face as she nodded in panic. When he let go again, Xiao Yun didn't scream but started mumbling hysterically, "A murder, murder. I'm calling the police. I'm calling the police." Her trembling hands reached for her phone and started dialing. Stupefied, Wang Tian snatched the phone effortlessly. Xiao Yun clutched his shirt, pleading, "Please, I'm begging you, call the police." Panicked, she tried to wrestle the phone back from him. "Are you crazy, Xiao Yun? You want to call the police and send me to my death?" Wang Tian shouted, anguished, and threw the phone to the ground. As Xiao Yun bent to pick it up, he pulled out a nylon cord from his pocket. The same cord he and Zhao Yuan had each taken one of during their planning. He originally meant to trick Zhao Yuan with it. Now, it seemed fate had turned the tables. Through tears, Wang Tian tightened the cord bit by bit. He wanted to laugh hysterically at how events had spiraled so absurdly out of control. All he had wanted was to get rid of Guoli. How had everything ended up exactly as he and Zhao Yuan had discussed? The woman in his arms stopped breathing. He let go, and she crumpled to the floor with a dull thud. Wang Tian stood there, dazed. What now? Did anyone hear the commotion just now? Dawn was approaching. He needed to drag Song Tao back inside. As he pondered, Zhao Yuan called. A sudden revelation struck Wang Tian. Of course, this sucker. He hastily erased any traces he might have left behind, leaving the scene and the two corpses for Zhao Yuan to handle. Who was Zhao Yuan coming to meet?
Song Tao. Who was Song Tao?
The man dead in the stairwell. Why did he kill? Let Zhao Yuan explain that himself. Sorry, pal. Blame it on your bad luck. Hiding in the shadows, Wang Tian watched Zhao Yuan, frantic and disoriented, pass by. Once he calculated that Zhao Yuan was nearing the scene, Wang Tian dialed the police and then called the mahjong parlor owner. From here on, everything depended on how Zhao Yuan spun the story.
Bang, bang, bang.
The knock on the door was urgent and relentless. Holding his breath, Wang Tian pressed his ear to the door. Suddenly, an enormous force sent him sprawling. Wincing from the pain, he looked up to see the door wide open and a group of people flooding in. Among them was someone whose presence made Wang Tian's mind go blank, as if struck by thunder. How could I have forgotten him? Guoli's brother strode over, grabbed Wang Tian by the hair, and yanked him upright. Turning to Zhao Yuan, he asked, "Is it him?" Zhao Yuan scrutinized Wang Tian for a moment before jumping up and shouting, "Yes, that's him. That's him." "You bastard." Guo Li's brother smacked Wang Tian so hard he saw stars. "I turned a blind eye to my sister's antics, just to avoid our family being disgraced. But you, how dare you drag our family into this mess? I'm going to beat you to death." Just then, a stern-looking man stepped forward. To Wang Tian's astonishment, Guo Li's brother immediately stopped and stood aside obediently. The man approached Wang Tian. "Hello, I'm Lu Yang from the District Criminal Investigation Team." But Wang Tian couldn't hear a word.